Hey everyone, welcome back to the Mark Loeffler Experience. Kel and James came all the way from London, Ontario, so we didn't have them make one, we didn't have them make two, we had to make 3 videos with us today. And you know why? Because we're talking about return on time.
Yeah.
We're going to be talking about return on time, why it's so valuable to think about this rather than ROI, even ROE. And if you guys don't know what ROE is, click down below. I did a video early on, so don't mind the quality about ROE, return on equity. Let's talk return on time. You own a decent portfolio of properties, around 52 doors.
Yeah.
You were retired. You left your corporate job.
Yeah, retired from the 9 to 5, yeah.
You left your corporate job 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, in 2019, couple years, yeah.
Yeah, 2019, so 20, yeah, do
Yeah.
the math. What was the purpose of like leaving that corporate job?
That's actually a great point. That was totally a return on time thing. Like, it was opportunity cost. When I bought my first property, I realized I could house hack, and that would save me at least $1,000 a month just from either renting or living in this house for free and getting the mortgage pay down. I was like, well, amazing, right? Like that getting that property was an amazing use of my time. And then I got my second property. I bought properties 2 and 3 on the same day I closed on them. And that's one of those properties I made $100,000 in net equity after everything. And I was like, well, I didn't make 6 figures at my day job. I was making somewhere between 50 and 80 grand, somewhere between the beginning and end of my career. And I was like, well, I just made more than my entire salary in 3 months or 4 months with that one property. So I was like, this is clearly a good use of my time, right? Like, why am I sitting there for 2,000 hours a year at my day job when I could get one property and make more than that? And I think that was when there was a pretty significant mental shift in my head, and I went, this is the best use of my time. And the job is there in order for me to qualify for mortgages, but the properties are there to really make where the real money's being made.
For sure.
So the intention was then at that point to just pour everything, all of my effort into the thing that had the best use of my time.
Yeah, well, it's so funny because we had Austin Ye on a couple months ago, and now he's going to be retired in the next 30 days or so.
I was really pushing him.
Well, so was I. I was like, I had him on here, and I'm sitting there like, I kind of want to smack you. Like,
I know.
Your return on time working for the bank is so small. Yeah. Like, it's minuscule. What's scaring you, right? Like,
there's a lot that goes into. There's a huge mental shift for people who go people like Austin or myself who were working at their day job and have to then, there's a sunk cost to this. Actually, I have a really great way to think about this. So I was working on my master's degree part-time while working on my day job. I started there. I was working at Cisco. I was working on a master's in information systems.
You're one credit short, aren't you?
I was one. So I worked through that for like 5. I ended up extending it. They're not even allowed extending it past this, but I got an exception made, extended it to 6 years. I was 1 credit away from graduating. This was at the very end of December of 2019. And I was like, this is a complete waste of my time. I've sunk in so much time into this, but there's no purpose in me doing this. I had already quit my day job. I was retired, right? And
retired from corporate.
Retired from the corporate world. I had no intention of using this degree anymore. 1 course away, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna teach myself a lesson here, and I'm gonna use this as an opportunity to remember that it's important to be able to quit things. Just because you've been doing something forever and you put all this time and effort into it, it doesn't mean that it's a good use of your time anymore. And I decided I'm gonna leave this. I have 1 course left. I literally had 1 essay to write. It was 1 large essay, like a 50 or 90 whatever page essay I had to write, a huge thing, but it was 1 assignment. And I went, I'm gonna drop out of the master's degree because it's not gonna bring any value to me. And I literally looked at it as maybe this essay is gonna take me, 2 hours a day or 4 hours a day for the next couple of months or whatever, right? And I was like, what if I instead spent that time looking for off-market deals or, building a coaching business or whatever it is that I think would be a good use of my time? And I went, well, clearly these are better uses of my time. The degree doesn't bring me anything. Maybe some legitimacy. I can say I have a master's degree. Well, great.
It allows, master's degree are great for time, for being able to trade time for money.
Yes. Yeah. It was such a direct way for me to look at this, is that now I'm understanding that just because I've sunken time into things, it's important to be able to quit things. And it was so funny. I don't know, Chandler David Smith, right?
Yeah.
he had the same situation. I didn't know this about him. He was doing a degree up until recently, and he decided finally to drop out of it. And he pushed it for 9 years. I went 6. And he was doing half a credit every whatever just to keep it going. I was doing the same thing. I was taking 1 course every 2 courses a year. It was technically enough for me to stay active. And like, it's so funny how people can have wild success, Austin Ye, and yet not be able to quit something because they think that because in our heads we go, what brought me here is what's going to get me to the next step, but it usually isn't. What got you here isn't what gets you to the next step. You often need to change tables, right? We talked about in the last video, like poker tables, right? Change to a different table. Work on the thing that's a good use of your time.
Yeah, and a lot of people have that fear of going from trading time for money to now, okay, I have all this time. Is the money still going to come in? Or like business owners, entrepreneurs, right? Like, I guess it was a little different for me. I was always in sales,
right?
So like
it wasn't time for money.
Like I had a small base, but most of my was performance based, right?
Yeah.
The harder I worked, the more contacts I made, the more contracts I wrote. So it was simple for me. I just applied that over here, and the switch for me was easy. But I get the 9 to 5 guys, like the corporate guys, like that's the hardest part, right? Where it's that mental mind switch of, okay, I'm not trading time for money anymore.
Yes.
And it's funny, like I talked to a guy today who made $300,000 on a stock that he bought at 5 to 4 yesterday. He closed it when market opened at 9:45 this morning, and he made $300,000.
Incredible, yeah.
And he goes, if I was at a job or something like that, he's like, this just wouldn't happen.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with his time.
Yeah.
It all has to do with his decisions, making intelligent decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like most successful investors I know that have built a portfolio while working their full-time job, I think first off, don't quit your job if you're still trying to get mortgages. I think there's a lot of value in that. You only really need a couple years. Like there's a lot of value in building that portfolio, using your job to qualify for mortgages. So I'm not saying just quit right away because it's going to be tough to finance things. But the vast majority of all of the investors I know that built that portfolio on the side, the minute they left their day job, they always make more than they made at their day job in the first month, 2 months, 3 months. It happens over and over and over again. It's just the nature of things. When you can then take 40 hours that you were spending sitting at that desk, ass in the chair time, and you can reallocate it towards useful time, the stuff that where you've really been making all of your money.
All the employers out there just clicked off the video. Thanks. Yeah, I mean, if you are an employee, it's okay, or an employer,
Well, I doubt there's a ton of people who are like really pumped about their hourly wage that are watching this, right? I think that like of course, I mean, I've talked about I've beaten this. I've beaten this into the ground. The idea of financial independence, right? We started London on Fire. We always talked about financial independence and the idea of retiring, right?
Yeah.
And it's not about retiring. It's about spending the time on the things you want to spend your time on. If you really do love your job, amazing. Not a lot of people do. So really, a lot of people want to quit their jobs. And that's where we tend to just take that shortcut and go, here's how you can quit your job. Because there's a pretty good chance that there's other things in your life that you would probably rather be doing with your time than what you're doing right now. Unless you're absolutely living the dream at your job, there's probably things you'd probably rather be doing. So
100%.
Yeah.
Well, and it's so funny though. Like I know we're talking return on time, but we kind of went to mindset too.
Yeah.
Is I've talked to some young people that want to get into real estate investing, and then they have like this anchor to something.
Yeah.
Like, and it's maybe not a job, but it's like I'm anchored to this condo, or I'm just like, well, you got to sell the condo.
Yeah.
And take the equity and go house hack.
Yeah.
And then, because you're living for free now, and then now that extra equity, you can go buy 2 or 3 properties.
Yeah.
And now you're really like getting that snowball rolling, right?
Whereas get some momentum.
Now they're just sitting on a condo. It's like, that's great.
That's almost always step one. And whether that's, and for some people, they don't want a house hack. Cool. Go rent a place and use that money to go buy an investment property, right? Like either way, there's better use of, there's a better return on investment there for you. And if you can get into a house hack, I mean, it's a fantastic return on your time as well.
Wow.
Not a lot of work. And now you save $1,000, $2,000 a month on your, net expenses.
Or even if you buy a triplex and you live in the basement apartment.
Yeah.
It's not like you're sharing.
Oh, it's amazing. I live in a triplex myself. I moved into a duplex, the first property that I ever bought. and then I eventually moved into a triplex. I make money in the property I live in. You can get nice properties where you can live in one unit. I have my own private back patio area. I put a hot tub in there. It's not like some crazy. I don't like. It sounds like it's bragging, but like you can have a nice little place to enjoy, and you can still be house hacking, right? It doesn't have to be living in the basement. But if you're like really intentional about wanting to change your life, I think that's an awesome way to look at it, right? I'm going to go live in the basement of a triplex, and I'm going to make money living there, and it's an amazing springboard.
Well, and then your return on time, right? Because how long does it take you to be able to find a property, to do all that? Once you've got that,
yes,
you see the return, right?
Yeah.
Like, so it might take you 20 hours, 30, 40, 100 hours.
Yeah.
Yet now you have an asset that's going to pay you while you sleep.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the biggest thing is, I've written a couple books, and like, it's just a thing I did way back when, but like every 6 months I get checks.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not massive, but it's something I've done. It's set it and forget it.
And it's
right?
not tied to your time at all.
Yeah. And if you guys want a copy of Fix and Flip, we'll put a Amazon link down below. You can go order it from them, and we'll give Kellen a copy here because he drove all the way from London, and obviously we want to make his return on time worth it.
I would actually love to hear your thoughts on like the idea of, there's a lot of people who they buy a bunch of properties, and then they sell them off, and then they buy a bunch more, and they're trying to really build that equity like in a new set of properties versus sometimes just buying a set of properties and hanging on to them for some years, right? Like, what are your thoughts on the return on time there? I tend to lean towards like, hang on to it for a bit, right? You've put a lot of time and effort into that property. You may as well now get to get the value out of it over time, right?
Right. So I actually wanted to call this book it wasn't Buy, Rent, or Refinance before Burr, but my publisher was like, no, Fix and Flip is hotter.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, whatever. I mean, you don't understand investing, but that's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, here's the thing. So there's pros and cons. So I used to flip a lot of properties. I did a lot of rent-to-owns that exited, and I made equity on those. Everything has its purpose.
Yeah.
So if I sold all my small stuff to buy bigger stuff. I sold some of the smaller stuff of those to buy even bigger.
Yeah, trading up.
Right? So I was trading up. I mean, if we had a 1032 exchange, it'd be a lot better, right? But, so if I didn't sell that stuff, would I be able to do what I do?
Right.
Maybe, maybe not.
Yeah.
So it's always that thing, well, okay, what's next?
Yeah.
And yet I look back, I go, if I had just held every property I'd bought,
right,
my portfolio would be $100 million.
Right.
Not 30 plus.
But it'd be hard to be able to qualify or get the money for the new purchases, right? The capital and the financing. And
so that's the whole game you play. And then it's, and now obviously I'm into other things, and my return on time is huge on the restaurants because, again, I'm just the equity partner.
Yeah.
I just show up with a check.
Yeah.
And I promote the restaurants on my Instagram or whatever, right? And I just eat. Really, I got introduced at one of the things, and they're like, Mark, what's your role here? I go, I'm going to come eat. And maybe bring some people. Oh, and drink probably too, right? And they're like, okay. But I love that role.
Yeah.
But and it's
so it's trying to strike a balance between like, putting the hard-earned effort into a property, getting, hanging on to it for a bit of time, but then there's definitely, I can see how there's a time where it makes sense to sell it off to trade up, right?
Well, then you're talking ROE, right?
Yes.
If you got so much equity in there and you can refinance it, but maybe you're going to be underwater by $2,000 a month. And yet you can take that equity, say it's $500,000, and then you can go and take that $500,000 and buy something bigger. Even after the tax hit, you can go buy something that's going to return that and more, right?
And like a prime example of that would be like the Toronto condo example you mentioned. A lot of people have $300,000 of equity sitting in a condo or something like that. I mean, what's your return on equity there, right? You have 300 grand. Maybe you could instead take that and buy a couple of triplexes that cash flow every month.
Yeah.
Like you're clearly getting a better return on equity in that scenario, and overall a better return on investment. So yeah.
Before we cut out, anything else? Return on time.
I think honestly, it's something I need to tell myself a little bit more. It's just the idea of outsourcing more, right?
Yeah, we did talk a lot about that before off camera.
Yes.
Where it's like, well, how like using a VA or something, or using an assistant or contractor or cleaning service or Instacart.
Yes. Like I think early on, you're buying your first property. I think it's great to do a lot of it yourself. I think there's a lot to learn there. I think you're getting a good return on time because you're going to now be able to hire contractors better in the future. You're going to better understand their role. Hire a property manager in the future. You're going to know what it's like for a good property manager to take care of things because you've kind of done it before yourself. First property, maybe second. It's good to do a lot of that yourself. But one of the first things you start hiring out is definitely contractors because very quickly that's not worth your time anymore. But then, at some point along the lines, you start figuring out, what other things you can start outsourcing. And it's something like I said, I'm trying to tell myself because I still do so much of it myself. I don't do any of the renovations, which is great. I definitely still self-manage all my properties, which it's not a ton of time, but it's definitely a chunk of time. And I could see value in me insourcing a property manager to at least take care of the basic stuff, right? Yeah. I can step in for the higher level decisions. And then just like anything else, right? Like we talked about the idea of hiring a cleaner. This sounds like, not first world problem, but just like the idea of like, oh, you have to be rich to hire a cleaner. They're like $100 a month, right? Or $120, they'll come clean your house once a month. Like, It's not too crazy. And it's a wonderful thing coming home to a nice clean house. But the thing is like you could have spent 4 hours cleaning that house yourself, but hopefully your time is worth more than, that $20 an hour, right? Yeah, and they bring all the cleaning supplies. So.
Well, I've had people on, like Sarah Larby, she has a personal chef that comes in and they cook the whole meals for the week. They do the shopping.
Yes.
Everything's packaged and they just, they get a fresh meal that day and everything else is just put in, you set it here for this much and away you go, right? Like and they're nutritious meals and they're good. They're,
And if you're the type of person who doesn't like cooking, then hire out the cooking, right? If you don't like cleaning, hire out the cleaning. If you don't like grocery shopping, get Instacart to deliver the groceries for you. If you like some of these things, do them yourself.
Well, it's funny. I always get the guy get somebody in to cut the grass. Well, he's like, I like cutting the grass. And I'm like, well, then cut the grass. I'm just saying that if you're making $300 an hour and you're doing a $20 an hour job, right? What's that return?
Yeah.
And, okay, if you like it, fine. That's great, right?
Yeah, you can't argue with that, right? You're not going to tell someone not to play guitar because they're not making any money playing guitar. Like, hey, enjoy it.
If that's what you want to do in your downtime, go nuts. Cleaning the gutters at my property wasn't and fixing them wasn't what I wanted to do. So I hired that out, right? Yeah. Like honestly, I got my car detailed because the guy does it so much better than I ever will. And
just the idea of, you talked about cutting the grass. Like, if you're willing to cut your grass, great. You're happy to save the $20 and maybe if you enjoy it, great. But a lot of people are doing it just because they want to save themselves the $20. Like, would you cut your neighbor's grass for $20? Like, would you scale this up and cut your whole neighborhood's grass all for $20? Like, you probably don't want to build a grass cutting business, right? There's a good chance that because you don't want to, get $20 to cut your neighbor's grass, that it's probably not really worth cutting your own grass either, right?
Yeah.
And and of course it comes to a point where you get, snow removal, any of that stuff, like anything that you don't enjoy doing, I think it's so important to hire it out. It's not even just about using that time to instead be working and make more money, but using that time to be able to relax and decompress, right? Like there's a ton of value in that. Yeah,
watch my YouTube videos.
Yeah. Educate yourself, get inspired.
If Kellen's ever doing YouTube again, and now he's watching his. We talked a lot about that, how he's going to stop procrastinating. And
I put out 4 videos or something like that. People have really been enjoying them, but I need to get back on there. Some support, I guess, if people want to leave comments and stuff, it'll remind me to get back on there.
Yeah, if we get those 500 likes, then definitely has to do it. So.
Yeah, I think it was 300. We'll do 500 now.
It was 300. I think was it 300 on this one? I don't remember. So. We'll make it 500.
500 now.
All right, guys. So return on time. Let us know what you're doing to really make yourself efficient and you get a great return on time. Leave the comment down below. Obviously, we talked about Tim Ferriss, the 4-Hour Work Week. Outsourcing. I think I'm going to reread that book.
Me too.
I actually probably put out an audio book. I love on 2 times or 1.5 times. Just fly through it. Well, thanks so much for making the trip down from London again. We certainly appreciate it. And hopefully we can add some value to you too. And thanks everyone. Have a great one.
Thanks.